going to replace elastic in your Cabbage Patch clothes. I don't know about you, but without the elastic, a lot of outfits just look like crap, especially on the kids. I've used safety pins, I've sewed, I've tried all sorts of things. Some things work better than others, but to be honest, replacing the elastic is the best option. Having said that, I am not a seamstress. I don't sew well, I'm self-taught, and sewing machines hate me. So taking the actual elastic off, putting new stuff on, not gonna happen. However, I have found a way that seems to work fairly well for most situations. It's not perfect, but for those of us who are not gifted in the sewing realm, this works pretty well. So, I'm going to show you a few techniques. The video covers different materials, different types of outfits, different types of elastic. I do suggest that you watch the different kind of elastic section before you do anything, just to give yourself a really good overview. I've covered materials that you might want to use. The materials available, of course, are going to change depending on where you live and what's available, but it gives you a general idea. Having said that, I am not responsible for any damage you do to your clothes with whatever you do, okay? So take it slow, experiment, see what works for you, because everybody's a little bit different, okay? Watch through. I hope you enjoy this. If you have any suggestions or something I might have missed that you think I should add, let me know, and have fun. I have just spent days replacing elastic, so it feels pretty good. I use two different kinds of elastic. This one I bought at Michael's. This one I bought at Walmart. This one is heavier and it actually has a little bit of a stronger elastic to it. This one is thinner and it's just a bit of a stretchier elastic. I use them for two different things, so that's why I have both of them. Neither one of them is expensive. I think they were less than $3. And they go quite a long way, especially this one. So you're good that way. Of course, I obviously also need scissors and a sewing needle. Now the trick is finding a needle that has a big enough hole for the elastic to go through. Obviously, this stuff is thicker than regular thread. I was just lucky. This was in my sewing kit already. I must have bought it with something. It's just wide enough for me to like poke it through the head, and it actually works out kind of well because it stays really well on the elastic. It does, however, have a very big blunt end, and I thought originally this was going to be a problem. It really isn't. I've actually noticed that this bigger blunt end has made things a little bit easier for me, or at least I think they have. So those are basically the things that you need to find for doing your elastic, other than, of course, the actual clothes that need the elastic replaced, which we will go over next. Please, again, keep in mind, I am not an expert at this. I have taught myself how to do this. If you have a better way of doing it, go for it. The other thing you might need to keep in mind is that you're going to probably have to remove other people's rather interesting solutions to the elastic replacement before you can do some things. So keep that in mind as well. And in order to do that, you may want to get a seam ripper like this one. It can come in really handy when removing other people's work. Okay, I'm going to show you how I thread my needle. Everybody's going to do this in a different way. I just thought I'd show you how I do mine to give you an idea of how you might want to do it. This is the thicker of the two threads that I use. It's actually called cord, for those of you who are looking. Basically what I do is I lay it along there and I use my nail to sort of shove it through the hole. Oops. And then I pull it through the other side. Okay? Now, the other thing you have to do is put a knot in the end. Now, unlike regular thread, I do this a totally different way. I literally just tie a knot and kind of push it to the end as far as I can. And I generally do that 2 or 3 times. It'll basically create a huge knot. And then you can clip off the excess that you don't need, and you're ready to go. You'll find out how much elastic you need for each job sort of as you do it. Each person's probably going to be different. So now we're going to learn how to tie it off. Once you've finished doing whatever it is you're replacing the elastic for, make sure it stretches the way you want it to be, that it's not going to be too big or too small. Pull it as tight as you want. Then take the finished end and you're going to tie it just the way you did before, making sure the knot is where you want it to be. Okay? And again, I do that once or twice. Make sure the knot's where I want it to be, and then just snip off the excess. You can then play with it a little bit, make sure it's what you want it to be. And when you're done, turn it right back inside, right side out, and you have your finished piece. Okay, so there appear to be about 4 different elastic situations from what I've seen so far. So the first situation I'm going to tell you about is this one. You can't see the elastic. It's in a pocket. Or, in this case, there wasn't any elastic. A lot of the tights don't have any elastic in them at all, which makes them really difficult to work with. So I'm going to put elastic in those. But that's the first situation. It's either in a pocket or you can't see it. The next one is what I'm calling the medium elastic. Okay? It's about 1/2 centimeter wide, and typically the stitching runs right down the middle of it. Okay, you've got lots of room to be able to put your needle through one side, so you can do some good stitching that way. Then we have the really wide elastic. This stuff is almost 1 centimeter wide, and it typically has two rows of stitching on either side. Okay, and the third one is this little tiny thin elastic, really tiny thin elastic. So I'm going to show you how I deal with each one of these different kinds of elastic, the thin stuff, the really thick stuff, the medium stuff, and none at all, as we go through. Okay, so we're talking about the really thin, narrow elastic. You really can't go through the elastic itself. It's just too small, and especially if you have a really thick needle like I do, it's just not going to work. So I generally start by going under it, use that to secure my knot. You see there. But then I have to use the space around it, the fabric near it. So if in this particular case, I have a section where there's 2 layers of fabric. There's this layer of the lace, and then there's a layer of gingham on the other side. So I'm actually going to try and go between the 2 layers. And I'm just going to weave in and out with whatever however often you want to do that. Pull it through, and you're just weaving, but try and keep it between the layers. The idea being this way, you can't see the elastic on the other side. It's also easier to get your needle through as well when you're only dealing with one layer of fabric. So that's just back and forth, back and forth. I hope you can see this because it's, see, I've got it just through, pull it through. Sometimes I have to go back out and pull it through, and if one goes through, it's no big deal. You know, it gets seen. So you're gonna go all the way around doing the same thing with that. Now there is another way to do this because you don't always have access to a double layer of fabric near your elastic. Okay, so this is the second situation where there is no double pocket of fabric for me to use to put the elastic in. So in this case, we're going to do something and just hope like heck that it actually hides it on the other side. Again, I always start at the fold, the spot where they come together, put it under, and instead of going down the pocket, I'm just gonna run it in the fabric. And I know this sounds horrible. It is visible technically when you're done. However, if you do it in small enough little in, and you're just going to go in and out as close to the elastic as you possibly can. You can see where I've done that. Once it's pulled really tight, you really can't see it. It's really hard to see once it's on the doll and once it's done. So again, just in and out, pull it tight, keep it scrunchy. Now, don't pull it too tight. You can actually make it so tight that your doll's arm or leg or whatever it is can't get through. So you just fold it in and out, in and out, in and out. So be careful you don't do that. All right, so just finish it up and then I'll come back and show you what it looks like at the end. Okay, so here it is finished. You can see I've got it finished. I'm going to turn it right side in so you can see what it looks like. So there it is. As you can see, you can see the elastic a little bit, but once you get that on your kid and get them dressed, you're really not going to be seeing that. You're not going to be paying attention to that. So for those items that don't have a double layer and you can't put it through the elastic, this is really the only solution. The great thing about it is, once you take it out, should you choose to do so, there's no evidence that it was left behind, right? So it's a really great, fairly uninvasive way to get that elastic in. So this is the medium width of elastic. It's typically got one row of stitching down the middle. But the great thing about this elastic is that it's wide enough that you can actually put the elastic into the elastic. And it's typically in fairly good shape. So as I say, put it through the elastic closest to where the fabric comes together. And then we're just going to run it one side or the other. It doesn't really matter, whichever is easiest for you. And you're going to go through the elastic and weave it in and out, just catching the elastic. Try not to catch the fabric that the actual outfit is made from, wherever possible. You don't need to do that. So again, we've just woven in and out of the elastic there. Pull it through and bunch it up. So you're actually helping the elastic to do exactly what it was originally intended to do, by just putting the elastic sort of back into it. Admittedly, it's not the way you're supposed to do it, but hey, it works. So there we go. Just pulling through. Do one more. And as I say, you can do this on the top of the elastic, the bottom of the elastic. Sometimes their bad sewing means you have to go from top to bottom, but if you can stay on the top or the bottom, it just helps your stitches look a little bit more even at the end. And again, keep everything nice and tight and go all the way around the sleeve or the bloomer or whatever it is that has that particular kind of elastic. Okay, so here it is, all done. It's inside out, so I'm going to turn it right side in. And that's what the new sleeve looks like. Okay, so old sleeve, nice and stretched out. New sleeve, nice and crinkly. Remember, don't make it too small or you can't get the hands or the feet through. Okay, so here's an example of the wide elastic. This is actually a pair of pants from the teddy bear cord outfit. The Velcros come undone. This is actually an IC pair. Again, the wide elastic is characterized by having two sewing lines holding it in. And we're going to do the same thing with this as we've done with the others. I start with the fabric comes together, go in and out and in and out. And again, the great thing about this is you've got two layers of fabric. So you're going to go between the elastic and the fabric of the pants. In and out, in and out, in and out. Keep it pulled. This technique doesn't work quite as well on the heavy pants. The jeans, for instance, they don't bunch up quite the same way. It doesn't have the same elasticity, so it doesn't have quite the same results, but it can definitely help hold the pants on. Just make sure you don't do it so tight that you can't get it up and over diapers and big bums and things like that. So just in and out of the elastic itself. And again, if you have to remove this at some point, it's fairly easy to do so. All the way around, keeping it tight as you go. That's it. Okay, here's the final product. You can see the pants are all done and they've got a waist on them that should work quite well. They're all ready to go. Okay, so here's a pair of tights, and I'm going to go through this process from start to finish, just so you can see the whole thing. And turn them inside out. As you can see, there's absolutely no elastic left in these whatsoever, so there's really nothing holding these on at all, except for maybe the diaper. So there is a piece of elastic in there. It's not doing its job, so I'm going to go in underneath the elastic. This fabric is not going to be nice to me. It's kind of difficult to work with this needle. Now, as I say, every needle is going to be different. This is a little bit harder fabric to work with. It's more of a polyester nylon, so it's a little bit different than the cotton or the elastic that you'd normally be working with. But the idea is you're not going to see the stitches from the outside because we're going through the double layer of fabric. And actually there's going to be the elastic between your stitch and the outside as well. Notice I'm not making them as small with this just because it is more difficult to work with. But again, depends on how you want to do it, what makes you happy and what you prefer. What I've noticed though is that like 80% of my tights needed to have new elastic put in them. They're really bad for losing their elastic. I'm not sure why that is, and it doesn't seem to matter what type. They just don't seem to hold their elastic very well. So no matter what type of elastic you're doing, it's this in and out motion is the same thing you're going to do each time. You can do it one at a time. I tend to put 3 stitches on my needle because of the length of my needle, and that's what makes me feel comfortable. But if you'd like to do 4, 5, 6, or just do 1 or 2, it's whatever you're feeling comfortable with. I tend to change it up depending on the fabric that I'm going through. Some fabric I find is too hard to pull more than 2 stitches through at a time. When I started out doing 1 stitch at a time. So whatever floats your boat and makes you feel comfortable, go with that. Remember, you don't want it too tight or it won't go up around diapers or big bums. In this case, these are actually the tights for a talker, so it's going to have to go around a fairly large posterior. Fairly large square posterior, actually. They had a very square body shape. Okay, we're coming up to the end here. Now you can tie the knot as previously shown, or you can also tie it the way you would a regular thread by, going out and tying little knots, and I'll show you how I'm doing that. So I've got to the end, pulled it as tight as I want it to. I'm going to just go through the fabric here, and I'm going to just loop through, tie a knot, go back through somewhere, tie another knot, go back through again, and just tie it off one more time. And then I can cut, and I'm done. So there's my newly elasticized tights to go on my talking kid. I think they'll stay up rather well, don't you? Okay, just a reminder when you're doing bloomers that you have both the leg holes to do as well as the waistband. With these light cotton bloomers, I do use the same thinner thread elastic. It works well for all 3 areas, so you can use the thinner stuff for that. But keep in mind you generally want to do all 3 spots on the bloomers, using whatever technique the elastic requires. Most of you will recognize these as Cabbage Patch jeans, and yes, they are from the same outfit, from the Windbreaker outfit. And yes, they do come in a variety of different sizes, as you can see. And they also come in a variety of different elastic systems. So this is one of the wider, extra wide pieces of elastic. This one has elastic that's built into the hem at the top. So just an FYI, you're going to do the elastic on these based on whatever type of elastic it happens to have. This type doesn't really respond very well to the elastic that I'm using, so just be careful with that. It does tuck it in, but it doesn't do much for the elastic part of it. This type tends to respond a little bit better. Okay, so I have an elephant romper here, ironically that has a duck on it. However, it doesn't have any elastic in the legs at all. Now, in some cases, they didn't have elastic. And in some of these rompers, especially these cord rompers, I have a feeling they didn't have any elastic to start with. However, I really prefer the look of elastic in a romper. I think it just finishes the look. So I'm going to put elastic into this romper. The great thing about this particular system is it's really easy to remove it. So if you don't like it at the end, or if you decide to sell it and you don't think it's original, you can always take it out. First thing you have to do is turn your outfit inside out. Then I generally start at the connector seam. This is a little bit more difficult for elephant rompers who have Velcro across the bottom, so keep that in mind. We're doing this one because it's got cord in it, so it's a slightly different setup. I do it basically the same way as most of the other outfits, but because it's cord, I'm going to show you how I do it, just to give you an idea. So basically, in and out. And I generally do about 3 of those. Now, I'm not going all the way through, so you can't see anything on the other side. Go out, do 2 or 3, pull it together, do 2 or 3 more. And I generally, how much space you want to leave is entirely up to you in terms of how much work you want to do. I find the smaller the stitches, the finer it looks at the end, but your hands and your situation are going to determine what you're going to do. Now, some of this cord material is easier to get through than others. I do keep it collected here, so it's all bunched up. Some of it is easy to go through, some of it is not. Sometimes it's easy to not go through the other side, sometimes it's not. So do whatever works for you with the particular outfit you've got. But basically you're going to go all the way around and then tie it off at the other end. And I will show you a little bit later in the video how to tie it off. But keep it bunched up, go all the way around, and you've got it done. Okay, so we've got here Windbreaker from the Windbreaker outfit. Just a reminder that not only do you have elastic in the arms, which typically does need to be replaced, in this case it'll be a straight through, easy to do, you also have elastic in the waistband. Just a note, when you do the elastic in the waistband, don't do it too tightly, because if you do it too tightly, when you go to do the Windbreaker up, you're actually going to damage and put pressure on the zipper. So make sure you're not doing too much, doing it too tight on the waistband. And again, same thing for the sleeves. You want to make sure that your hands are still going to fit through them. Okay, here we have a ducky dress, and there's a couple places on here where you could potentially put elastic. I enjoy putting elastic in the bloomers. They don't tend to stay up very well unless you put something in them. You don't have to do it really tightly, but I just find something really helps with the bloomers. They don't originally come with elastic, so keep in mind if you're doing this, it's not original to the outfit. However, they do actually stay on that way. In addition, the sleeves of the outfit. Now these did originally have a basic type of elastic in them, but again, most of the time it's fallen apart by this point, and you'll want to put something back in there if you can. It is going to be visible, however, so use at your own discretion, because of course there isn't a double layer of fabric there to hide it in. Okay, so this is one of the bunny preemie outfits, the terry cloth outfits. There's a few outfits in terry cloth, not very many, until you get later in the transitional period, and beanie butt outfits, but this particular one's quite popular. However, the bloomers quite often lose their elastic. These ones I've already replaced the elastic in, so you've got the top as well as the leg holes. Typically you do have to replace the elastic in these. When you're doing that, again, you're either going through the elastic or through the terry cloth itself, whatever you have to do to get that done. There's no elastic in the actual top, but the other place you have to remember is the bonnet. There is a little bit at the back of the bonnet to help it stay on the head, and this is really important with the terry cloth ones. They tend to slide off really easily if you don't have that there. So just to note that there's those sections on your terry cloth outfits as well. Okay, so this is a hat from a preemie outfit. They do actually have elastic in the back section here to help hold it on the head. So we're going to replace that really quickly, and just going to show you how I do it. It's pretty much the same system as anything else, although this elastic that they used on the ones that I've done so far tends to be much harder than the other elastic, so it can be more difficult to poke your needle through. You'll notice I'm not pulling it as tight as I do some of the other things. You don't want it to just be bunched at the back of the kids' heads, so careful with that. There we go, that adds some give to it. So that's it. Tie it off and you're done. So keep in mind with preemie bonnets, there's actually 2 spots where you need to do elastic, along the back of the neck as well as along the front. Now again, each bonnet is going to be slightly different. They're going to have different amounts of elastic. They might have different kinds of elastic. This is the really thin stuff. So when you're doing, what you're doing is going to depend on what you need in order to fix that particular bonnet. But keep in mind there are generally 2 places, both the front of the bonnet and the back of the neck. Okay, so here we're looking at one of the animal sleepers, the little costumes. I don't know how much elastic they originally came with, but I have to admit, I often have a hard time getting the hoods to stay on the kids unless they have hair. So for bald kids, they're like functionally useless. And I just find that they look kind of sloppy without having any elastic at the sleeve. So I'm going to give you a hint about how to put some elastic into the sleeves and the hood without it looking really horrible. Now this only puts a little bit of elastic in. It's not really tight, but it'll give you a hint. So I'm going to do this sleeve. If you turn it inside out, just like we have with everything else, instead of doing a lot of little stitches, this time we're going to do fairly big ones. So I'm going to go in, and instead of going really close and popping out like here, I'm going to go almost the length of my entire needle. So the longer you have the needle, the better, or at least the longer the space is going to be. I'm going to pop out the other side here. And again, instead of doing a great big stitch, I'm going to do a little tiny one, really close, and go the length of the needle again. Try to keep it running down the middle. I didn't do such a good job that first time. And so when you pull it, it's going to just pull it really basically. Now, the tighter you want it, the smaller your stitches are going to have to be. So keep that in mind. But the smaller the amount that's visible, the better. So now the furry aspect of this material does help keep it a little bit hidden. Keep it, pull a little bit as you go. And again, we're not looking at a really tight thing here. Just enough to bring it in at the kid's arms so that it doesn't look sloppy. just find it looks really sloppy if it's not, you know, pulled in a little bit. So a little bit pull in, and then we're gonna go, again, just a little bit. Just a little bit. See, I've only gone like half a centimeter, not even, maybe 1/4 of a centimeter. And pop out the other side up here. I want to pop out, there we go. And then I'll tie it off. So as you can see, it's not really tight, but it gives it just a little bit of pull so that when it goes around the kid's hand, it looks finished. So that's what the sleeve is going to look like. Now, we'll finish. Okay, so here's the bunny sleeper. I'm going to put some elastic in the head here. Just a little bit, as I say, just enough to keep it closer to the head. Doesn't feel like it ever came with any elastic, so I don't think it ever had any, but again, I can take it out again if I don't like it, or if it doesn't work, or if the kid that I put it on, I want, you know, a bigger head space. Now, when you're going in, I've been going in by where they had the ribbon, and that allows you to put the knot out of sight. So there's generally a little kind of hole where the ribbon comes out. And again, just a small little bit, and I'm going to go the whole length of the needle. How much you want to pull this tight will depend on you, what kid you want to put it on. I mean, if you're trying to put it on a preemie, then you're probably going to want it tighter. If you're trying to put it on a bald kid versus a kid with hair, you know, that's going to be a difference. So yeah, so I'm just doing the little tiny 1/4 of a centimeter stitch, and then pulling it through the full length. So just a little tiny space between where I came out and where I go in. And again, I'm going between the 2 layers of fabric so that I don't end up with anything visible on the outside. And really, when you pull it, your little stitches get lost in a fold, so they're not visible either. Now, I might get stopped here. Oh, yeah, I get stopped at the seam. So I have to do a little hinky there at the seam. Alright, pull it through. There we go. Don't forget to keep pulling it. Again, I'm not pulling it too tight, just enough to give it something, you know, so that it's not just flopping around their head. Come on, needle, go in there. There we go. And as you can see, I am not an expert seamstress by any stretch of the imagination. Now, if you want it to be tighter over here, you can bunch it up over here. It'll spread out eventually. Oh, don't want it to come out that close. Alrighty. There we go. Now I'm getting close to the end here. And as I say, there's a pocket kind of where the ribbon goes in that I can then use to do the knot. So if I can get my needle down right to the pocket, perfect. Okay. So there's the pocket down there. So I'm going to just go in behind. It's kind of hard to see, but I can actually see where my thread is there. So that's where I can start to do oh, before I do that, I want to pull it tight. So I need to take that stitch out. Pull, 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 pull. There we go. Okay, now I'll go in. There it is. Okay, so there'll be a little bit of a stitch visible, but it's actually going to be hidden quite a bit by the ribbon. Okay. There. So now you have some elastic to the headpiece. Hopefully it'll stay on a little bit better. Okay, so this is a beanie butt diaper, or a baby diaper, depending on what you call them, BBB. And they actually have a row of elastic in the one side. This is the side that goes around the back side of the doll. So you'll need to replace the elastic in that, and typically you're going to use the same process you would use for a pocket, because there is a piece of elastic in there, so there's a double layer of fabric. So it's just a weave in and out of that fabric. It is a little bit harder with the blunt needle on this fabric, but it's easy enough to do in the long run. Same thing, keep it close. Again, don't make it too tight or it won't actually do up. The Velcro won't actually do up. So be careful about that, but otherwise, have fun. There are two different Coosa outfits that require elastic. The first one is this one in the legs, as well as on the back of the outfit. Otherwise, it just really doesn't fit very well. The other outfit is the dress outfit worn by the girl Coosas. There's a variety of different patterns, but they require it basically from one side to the other so that it fits properly.